So today we're going to be taking a look at Age of Darkness Final Stand. Personally, I don't know why they didn't just shorten that to Age of Darkness, but whatever. Age of Darkness is a dark fantasy-themed, real-time strategy game developed by PlaySide. Now, as per usual when I put together these review videos, I did a bit of preliminary research on PlaySide to get a better understanding of their development history, and I was a bit surprised to learn that PlaySide has literally dozens of titles under their belt, which is no small feat in of itself. However, interestingly enough, the overwhelming number of these titles were indeed mobile games, with only 4 PC titles, the newest of them being of course Age of Darkness. The previous 3 games were all VR exclusive, indicating that as a developer, PlaySide historically has been more interested in newer emerging markets rather than appealing to long-standing ones. I mention this because I find it extremely interesting that this newest game, their first non-VR PC game, is a real-time strategy game, which is probably one of the oldest PC-specific game genres, and arguably has one of the most dedicated but likewise obstinate gaming demographics out there on PC. Coming from a VR and mobile game studio, it's definitely something a bit out of their wheelhouse, but it's quite possible that after the release of one of their latest products prior to this one, having worked with AMC on the Walking Dead Saints and Sinners VR game, they may have finally squirreled away enough money to finally strike out on their own and work on a pet project of theirs. Either way, here we are. Put simply, Age of Darkness is set in a fictional medieval setting where you and your army face off against a seemingly endless zombie horde wave. Which attacks in waves only at night, using only swords, spears, magic, and most importantly fire. Yeah, if you, like me, are getting Game of Thrones vibes from this, I can't say I blame you. There doesn't seem to be much of anything in terms of a story campaign or alternate game modes or maps. What you see here is what you get, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. From a gameplay perspective, Age of Darkness is, at its heart, a real-time tower defense game. For clarity's sake, I'm not referring to genre here, but just in terms of how it plays out. You have a fort at the center of your little civilization that you have to protect at all costs. To do that, you have to erect lots of towers, walls, gates, etc., and other barriers that keep the undead from clawing their way into your main keep and destroying it. One of the first things I noticed upon launching the game, picking the difficulty, and jumping in, was that, to my surprise, Age of Darkness lacks anything even remotely resembling a tutorial, even an optional skippable one. Generally, when it comes to games like this, I tend to dabble with the tutorial for a minute or two, trying to figure out a lot of the basic mechanics and user interface. RTS games tend to overload you with quite a lot of on-screen information, and you usually have to be quite hands-on if you want to win, so knowing what to do from the start is something of a must. Not having that transition can make things quite a bit harder than they need to be, as you end up potentially wasting valuable time figuring stuff out, when in reality you need to be expanding your borders, establishing your resource supply, increasing your population count, and organizing your defenses all as quickly as possible. Don't make the easy mistake of confusing these seemingly slow, mundane daytime cycles for times where you can effectively sit by and watch your little empire do its own thing. This is not The Sims or 2 Point Hospital. Speaking on the matter of all things confusing, the process of selecting units is a nightmare. For the life of me, I cannot stand how there is no easy way to distinguish between 2 objects close together in proximity. If I want to click on one single soldier without necessarily selecting any others that might be standing near him, and that one soldier is blocked by a house or some other structure, which is incredibly likely if you make the most of your available space, which you're kind of forced to do out of necessity, you're just currently out of luck. The game doesn't appear to have any way to click on a singular object if that object is standing behind another larger object. I don't know why this can't be resolved by just maybe allowing users to be more specific via scrolling with the mouse wheel, or something to alternate between bordering objects, or something similar. But hey, that's just me. There are probably better ways I've not thought of, and certainly I'm open to ideas there. I'm just here to point out the issue, not necessarily figure out the solution. On a similar note, I found that the game oftentimes doesn't make it clear where your hero character is on the map at any given time. When you consider the size of your growing city, it can be very easy to lose track of where any single unit is located at any given time, especially if you have many units spread out in a variety of locations. Personally, I try to minimize this by mostly just focusing on having the archers remain stationary at their posts, spread out across the land, while concentrating all my melee units into this one single very dense formation in the middle of my territory, where I can quickly and easily relocate them when the game indicates I'm due for an incoming attack. My logic being that if the enemy feels it can blitzkrieg me, I will gladly do the same with my significantly inferior fighting force. It's worth noting that currently the unit variety here is quite a bit lacking, which is definitely more than understandable considering this is early access, but the extremely limited roster of unit types makes it difficult to come up with more unconventional yet potentially effective strategies. One need only look at basically any other game with character roles and functions, like other real-time or turn-based strategy games, or even MOBAs or hero shooters, to attest to the fact that the more options you give the player on how to engage and achieve the end result, the wider array of strategies you've subsequently created, and by extension the amount of additional replayability you've created. One of the game's few but notable critical flaws, and I'll address this in two parts, is a lack of overall communication to the player about what to expect from the next wave of zombies. For one, it's not until the beginning of the zombie wave that the game declares to you in bolded text the number of zombies that will be accosting your defenses. This would have been better to know earlier, and I'm not saying the developer needs to give players a lot of time to adapt to the information, because that could lead to an unfair imbalance in the player's favor, but I don't think it'd be too unreasonable were the game to give the player a 30 or 60 second heads up about not only where the zombies are going to be spawning in, but also their number. And that kind of gets to my second point. The procedural generation determining where the zombie horde will strike makes it all but impossible to effectively plan out your defense prior to the onset of the wave. And since you will never practically have the resources to equally defend all sides of your continually growing base, the odds are that you'll find yourself screwed over time and again by the algorithm with little chance of any meaningful comeback. Now don't get me wrong, I'm definitely one to romanticize the concept of a small army hopelessly outnumbered and outflanked by superior forces, desperately making one last heroic stand to save their homeland from foreign invaders. I'm all for letting in my inner William Wallace or Leonidas, for 'tis better that we should fight and lose our lives as free men, for we shall dine in hell rather than to let our enemies take our freedom. It just feels wrong for the AI to indicate via an on-screen symbol that it's going to attack one particular side, only for it to at the very last minute have the symbol disappear completely and instead reappear on the polar opposite side of your base, where you have the least amount of defenses. And that's something that we do see in the game right now. For the record, I played through for hours on both easy and normal difficulties, and while there were a few notable differences in terms of managing your resources and how much otherworldly BS you have to deal with, the game is still very challenging for anyone not already at least somewhat familiar with other large-scale RTS games like They Are Billions. I'll add just a quick footnote here and say the game's visuals and its performance are both really high quality. Considering we're talking about a game designed to visually render literally thousands of in-game models at once, which can have a directly correlating effect on the performance, it actually ran pretty smoothly. The developers knew what they were doing, so that's not a problem here. The quality of the models and animations, at least when it comes to the enemy zombies, are reasonably high quality compared to what I was expecting. The lighting was also reasonably well done. I do think the fire effects could have been a bit more elaborate, either a bit more stylized or a bit more realistic. Compared with all the purpley LEGO Universe-esque dark energy the zombie horde seemed to be consistently drawing forth, our own dull, yellowish-orange fire wasn't exactly super awe-inspiring. I do think the hero cooldown abilities could have been given a bit more flair, as while the active abilities are super helpful in terms of clearing space for your minions and getting a bunch of immediate enemy kills, they aren't exactly very visually gratifying to use. If you enjoy real-time strategy games or tower defense games, I highly recommend giving this game a go. I really had a blast playing this game, and ended up sinking in way more time than I had initially expected while reviewing it. Once I figured out there was only a single arcade-style mode, I figured I'd maybe spend, 4 or 6 hours in it, enough to take in all the necessary details and move on. As of now, I put in over 12 hours, and I'll probably be more than happy to put in another 12 hours at least if the developer goes on to add more additional content and address some of the concerns I laid out earlier. Sure, it's far from perfect, it definitely still has that work in progress feel to it, as many early access games do, but for the amount of content I got from it so far, I definitely feel the $22 price tag is more or less worth it. I'll admit, I'm still a bit confused why they went for specifically $22, when generally it's traditional with games like this to release in $5 increments like $20 or $25. But hey, it's a good game, so who really cares? On that note, that's probably where I'm going to wrap it up for today. As ever, if you enjoyed this video and want to support what I do, you can click the subscribe button and opt into getting notifications by clicking the bell icon. It really helps more than you know. Let me know what you think of this video down in the comment section below. I read all your comments posted on the channel, so if you have any questions or have any comments of your own, etc., you can leave them down below, and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. This is WarriorDan signing out. Stay awesome, everybody. Stay safe and peace out.